I love going out into the Hall of Valor during breaks, and you're doing exactly what a key part of this conference and competition is about, is you're mingling and getting to know each other. So after this, we're going to have more opportunities tonight to get to know each other, because one thing I can assure you is that some of you are going to see each other again in this field of cybersecurity, and you never know when that's going to be. So take the opportunity to get to know each other, get to know each other's work at different schools, different ways that different schools approach many of the problems and issues that we heard about from your great questions while we're out here, and take advantage of all the expertise we have. So our next this upcoming panel is going to address something that's very practical and should be near and dear to most of your hearts, which is hiring advice for college students. And it's by those who really know, the corporate experts who hope to hire some of you after listening and interviewing you. So be on your toes when you're talking to them. Here to introduce and moderate this section is Lieutenant Colonel Ahmad Sheikh, who is VMI's Director of Career Services. So I'm going to let him introduce our experts. Please give him a hand and a warm welcome.
Good evening, everybody. You guys ready? All right, the energy in the room is great. It is good to be with you. I have a terrific panel this evening. Pay attention, take notes, give them a good round of applause, a warm welcome as I call them in. And it's a random order, so they're not ranked in any way. All right, my first panelist is Mr. Ted Wagner. He's the Vice President and the CISO for the Enterprise Security with SAP, National Security Services, SAP NS2. I wasn't done yet, to be honest. And a class of 88. How about that? Yes. And I'll let him tell you what all that means in a few minutes, okay? Our next panelist is Mr. Dan Bono. He's the VP of Cyber Mission Operations at CACI. Round of applause. Mr. Tutran is our next panelist. He's the Director of Federal Programs with Microsoft. Joining me. I want to make sure I speak into this for our recording. Before we begin, if you could just take a couple of minutes, talk about a little about your background and why they need to be listening and paying attention. I'll just start with you, Mr. Wagner.
Hi, so I'm Ted Wagner. I graduated from VMI in 1988. I was commissioned as second lieutenant and joined the Army. I was stationed with the 101st and deployed to Desert Storm with General P, former superintendent. Having said all that, I got into my first job after the military was an IT job. And I actually worked the help desk. So I'm going to return to that. I had initiative, I had intellectual curiosity, and the military did teach me about hard work. We heard from a previous speaker that there's a lot of work, especially in the infantry, apparently. But where did that go? It led to working at the Army Cyber Command. It led to working in a corporate security operations center, and ultimately my role at SAP as a CISO. There is pressure, but there's no better feeling than serving a customer who has a national security mission. So I'm pleased in the role that I have.
Evening, everybody. Dan Bono, work at CACI, Vice President, Cyber Mission Operations. How many of you are here looking for a job? How many of you think it's competitive to find a job? You're right, on both accounts. And you're looking for, hey, we can talk later. Hey, so I started off my career in 2001. So in 2001, I graduated from James Madison University. That's right. So I graduated from JMU, and that's right, go Dukes. And I started off as a software developer. Back then, there was not cybersecurity. There was kind of this thing, we talked about cyber, but it was really more about the movie The Matrix. Dating myself. So we talked about cyber, but this field has grown, it's expanded, and it's developed itself. And you guys are developing it today. So right now, transitioning from being a software developer to system architecture is what I worked after that. After that, I was excited enough and able enough to do program management. So my career kind of progressed in that way, and then working with a fantastic team, able to lead a department at CACI. But going back to the fact that what are we thinking about here, how you guys can advance yourselves and find the right skill sets. Some of the things I learned, hope to be able to share with you today, and what I experienced looking for a job when I was coming out of school. I wish I had an organization like this that existed at that point in time. It was all about us, and it was all about trying to find what we were going to do after college, after the military, that sort of thing. So really excited to talk to you guys today about what we've experienced, what maybe you guys should be tuning into and looking for, and where we go from here. So thanks.
Hey, good evening, everyone. Tu Tran. My technology career started when I was in high school. I started as help desk and a computer and network technician. Went to college to continue to do the same job. From there, I commissioned into the United States Marine Corps. Hoorah. I was in signals, or comm as they would call it, in the military. Did it for about 10 years. Did my deployments to Afghanistan, Iraq. Decided to transition, came to Microsoft, been here going on my 8th year now. And in my many capacities, in my collateral duties at Microsoft, I help run our college hire program, our intern program, and our military transition programs. I am looking forward to talking to you all and hopefully helping you out in your journey into cyber, into IT.
I'll stay with you, too, if that's okay. I know we lead the world in many things, and one of them is employment dissatisfaction. Millions of people wake up every morning, go to jobs that they can't stand or don't like, and so on. So just like any other industry, you would think people are going in and out of cybersecurity. And so if you could talk a little bit about the major, when I think about cybersecurity, I'm thinking maybe computer science major. What other options are there, and what would you want the young people to know about their journey and as they consider cybersecurity as a possible career path?
Sure, there's a couple different ways I can answer that. So one, I'll try to address the job dissatisfaction, I guess, to a degree, but with the Microsoft lens. But what I'm hearing is what types of avenues or paths can someone take into cyber? Well, I would generally say, and I'm pretty sure I'll speak on behalf of everyone else, is that it's never a linear path. What I always advise everyone, even to my colleagues, is you want to build a profile of experiences. You don't necessarily want to target a career path because jobs, roles have changed, especially in technology year over year. New roles are created, right? Now we have more focus on AI jobs, cyber AI jobs, which did not exist a few years ago. So what I'm trying to allude to is what you want to be able to do is gather a range of experiences, and not just technology experiences, but understanding a business, understanding a mission and how that functions is where to start from. When it comes to, say, job satisfaction, that's just why when you gather those different experiences, you're able to pivot because you're not locked into a certain role that is you're doing the same thing over and over again. You want to be curious. You want to explore these different opportunities wherever you land at. So I know for myself, when I would say I was transitioning from the military, I saw individuals, and the reason why they're dissatisfied is because they didn't challenge themselves, right? They didn't. And that's comes from a lot of places. Is that if the place you're at isn't challenging you, you need to go challenge yourself, right? You need to be your own advocate for that. You can't rely on your employer. You can't rely on your colleagues. You are your best advocate, and it's going to be people like your managers or your leaders who are going to help you with that. But you have to own that.
I'll take it. So I liked what you said. You know, diversity of your experience is critical, especially as you move forward in your career. So you want to look for those things that will open doors and open opportunities. We both worked on a help desk. I think that's a great experience because you learn how the enterprise works, how a computer connects to the Active Directory enterprise that you operate. That basis of knowledge and experience enables you to go forward with some things. Volunteer for that next opportunity. My career is full of we need someone to take on this project. I'll do it, and be the best. Be better than your peers. Work harder, and be curious. We've talked about this ahead of this discussion. If you're intellectually curious, you want to learn something, you'll stand out, and you'll be recognized, and you'll be appreciated, and you'll be compensated. All those things will be the outcome of that. So I encourage you to drive to that next level. Self-learning, take a class, read a book. I had to learn about AI recently. I didn't know anything about AI. I bought a book. I read NIST's AI risk management framework. I threw myself into it and wrote a policy. So I encourage you to take the same approach.
Dan, I'll go next to you if you want to take that question on, but also talk about where this industry is today and where is it going for the next 20 years. Role of AI, for example, or any new aspects of the field our students need to know about.
Yeah, so it's interesting. I loved what the panelists said so far. The role of AI is changing, and everybody, I love the conversation we had earlier about AI. And it's important. I'll link it back to your question about computer science. There's more than just computer science, but I love computer science. And it's the application thereof, though, right? What are you going to do with what you learned in school, and how are you applying it to different things, different avenues you could take? Are you tinkering? Are you out there doing the cyber range activities? Are you doing competitions like this? This is a very exciting weekend. I think doing that to help grow your skill set and know what you did and know what you learned and put it in practice is very important. So some of the things we've talked about being curious, I love that, because that is the key, I think, to helping ensure that we grow and we're asking the right questions. In terms of AI and where's AI in the field going, within cyber, you see a lot of penetration testing and algorithms to learn what different TTPs are doing and how adversaries are gaining access to systems that they shouldn't. And how do AI systems help defend that? But how are those systems being trained and learned? That's definitely a field. I think another field is training autonomous systems with synthetic data. How do you develop network data and traffic to train autonomous systems? We're doing a lot of and hearing a lot of autonomous vehicles, learning a lot of gamification and doing a lot of gamification training. But how is AI being used to train those systems? And then how do you tie that into cybersecurity to make sure that the training is genuine and the data that you're using is, the pedigree and provenance of the data is genuine and not tainted? I think that's a very important aspect that we don't think a lot about. So on that path, when you think about the courses you're taking and people are asking questions, great questions today, guys. I loved it. Asking these questions about, what should I be taking? I think also along the realms of ethics. What is ethical to do with what we're doing with AI? I thought it was a great touch point today in the conversation earlier about, the guidelines of AI and what is the future. But think about the ethics. Think about the data science between what's believable and what's not, and how people are getting manipulated day to day with different AI algorithms that are out there, or training or deep fake technologies. And learning through your academics how to think. We can't forget how to think, and just to apply, we have to do both. So that's where I am at this point.
Yeah, so the question recalling us how AI is changing sort of the landscape of the job market and its application. So I'm going to be probably maybe a little controversial with this statement. It's not going to change much, fundamentally. Because all AI is just another data science tool in the bigger scheme of data management and data governance, right? Just like a Power BI dashboard or a Tableau, you're just providing a way to interpret the data, right? So what I'm trying to get at is that what's going to matter is ensure, and as a question that talked about earlier, is how do we govern and manage it, is fundamentally generative AI is feeding off a data source. Companies, organizations, entities control that data. So, and there's already pre-existing roles such as data stewards, data owners that have a responsibility to ensure that data is accurate. So all I'm really trying to say is that this is just an extra skill people need to be aware of. when it comes to using AI, is all AI is doing is using the data you all are giving it. And understanding fundamental practices when it comes to data management will ensure of those things. So that's why I say it will change somewhat, but more from a skilling standpoint, but not from a, say, revolutionary change. Where I do see it making some significant change is to our day-to-day. What I've always said is every one of us has like 25 things we need to do every day in our job function. But it's always the first 3 or 5 things are eating our lunch, because they're repeatable, do it over and over again. This is where AI and tools like technology can take that off our plate, so we don't have to focus on those things that need to be repetitive and focus on the more transformative things. So that's where I do see it making some disruption, is making, in its right application, or how we all want to use it, our life easier so we can focus on the bigger and better things.
Thank you for that. Ted, I'll come to you. A resume question, if I may. They also sit among their competition. And one thing that will never happen is that, even though I'm a good friend, but you go ahead and you take that opportunity, I'll wait for the next one. You know, that's not going to happen. Maybe it will. So as you sit across your desk and you post a position and you've got, I don't know, 150 resumes, and you're evaluating the candidates, talk about the role of soft skills, communication and time management and initiative taking and so on. And how can candidates highlight that in a meaningful way where they could stand out from their competition?
So I think when you look at a candidate, you're looking at the entire person, because we want, in my organization, I think my friends here will say the same, we don't want you for 18 months, we want you for a career. We really do. But you have to be a good member of the family. You have to communicate well. And I think we mentioned this before we came out. What do we spend more time on? Miscommunication, conflict in the workplace. You talked about satisfaction. That is critically important, that we learn how to communicate. And one of the things we're really finding out post-COVID, in-person communication. You know, we all have gotten very good at team meetings and Zoom meetings. We find that the in-person meetings are really effective. But to continue on to address your question, what are the intangibles? Is there diversity in the experience? Like, it's one thing to get the academic experience in the classroom. Did you apply it? And I shared with a couple of folks on the floor, you can't replicate sitting behind a console looking for a bad person doing security monitoring. You can't replicate doing that in person. If you have an opportunity to do that, do it. Whether it be an internship or a cyber defense lab or whatever it is, that will speak volumes. And then there are the intangibles, which are, were you a good member of the community? Were you a Boy Scout? Were you helping a charitable event? Those things, they matter to me. That speaks to the full picture of the person.
Yeah, so, pardon me. Some of the intangibles. Think about what we've talked about here and think about what you have to do in the workplace. So if you were in this seat or you're hiring somebody, do you want to hire somebody who's collaborative? Head nods if you do. Do you want to hire someone who's collaborative? Do you want to hire someone who's cooperative? Probably. Do you want to hire someone who's competitive, though? You probably do, because you want to be competitive, because not competitive that you want to go knock somebody out, but you want to be competitive. You want to be competitive with yourself. You want to be competitive to show that you're growing. And what we talked about earlier about being curious. So how do you show those things on a resume? I think we want to see, what I'm looking for a lot of times on a resume is, how did you work with others? How did you lead others? How did you teach others? What role did you play on a team? You know, when you see things on a resume that say, I worked to develop a AI model that did X. Well, you worked on it, but what were you doing as part of that team? I want to know, I need a couple of keywords on your resume that say, I led an effort with the research 40 hours doing this, and this is what I learned. that's going to get you. That's going to get your attention, or that's going to get the attention of the resume reader to say, "Hey, tell me more about that." You're starting a conversation with those types of things. So that's something very applicable when you make things foundational and you use words that are helping us review to see, to draw our curiosity in. Those are the things that are very helpful. And I think hopefully I'm addressing the question that you were asking. But those tangibles are things that I think really help us distinguish the work that you did from what you did from what you did. And it gives us that vector.
And I want to touch upon a point of the example you said, giving someone an opportunity. I would encourage that because, and I will say generally for probably all of us, it is easy to have our own individual success, right? It's pretty easy because we can control that. What tells all of us employers, especially how we look at it here at Microsoft, is how did you make the other person successful? Not necessarily leading. So if you do give them that opportunity, can you help coach them behind the scenes? Because ultimately what technology is enabler, right? We exist to make the mission better, therefore someone else better. So what we say here at Microsoft, we are not here to be cool, we're here to make others be cool. So the basically saying is challenge yourself to make other people better and let them have that spotlight, because that tells us, again, they're collaborative, right? You're cooperative and you're a good fit. And that does convey on a resume of how you've been impactful, how you can help, lead from behind the scenes so that way others can be successful and you grow them, because that's then becomes scalable. Those are the types of people we want, because an individual success, that's not scalable, right? But if you're able to make others successful, that is hugely impactful, and that's what we want, and that's the hardest thing to do. Right? I'm pretty sure everyone here is here for a reason, and they're very successful individually, but I would challenge you to make others around you successful.
Spoke like a true Marine. Dan, I'll come to you. Getting your foot in the door, right? Not everybody is equally gifted or talented or have equal access to resources, and they may start at a different points in their life, and there might be a difference in GPA. But everybody wants that perfect position and a perfect job. Talk about the role of perhaps planning and maybe transitioning into something bigger over time and being patient and finding the right role to start off. And I always say, the further removed you are from college, the less relevant your GPA is, right? The more experience matters and certifications possibly, but how would you guide young folks that are coming into the field and being patient and taking on roles that aren't perfect yet, but they can lead to something maybe bigger down the road?
Say yes. When you are asked a question or when you are asked to take on a duty or responsibility in the workplace, say yes. If you don't want to do it, that's okay. But if someone's asking you to do something different, something new, something that might not even be exciting, open your aperture a little bit and be willing to try something different and something new, even if it's not what you want at that point. So I'd say having an open mind, and we've used the word, if you guys haven't picked up on it, we've used the word curious, I think 10 times so far since we've been sitting up here, because I think that's what we're seeing a degradation at times, is people wanting to come in, do what they know, and walk out. But that aspect of being willing to try new things, being willing to help others, and demonstrating that. I was talking to, I think, Whitney today, right? Whitney's was joining us in, previous career as a nurse, but she's interested in information technology and how do I get into it? And I thought, wow, this is inspiring that she was trying to tie, how do I do what I did as a nurse and tie that into information technology and cybersecurity? Are there places in that field? Just asking that question to me was a brilliant way to try to tie in, hey, this is what I know and what I do, and this is where I want to be, so how can I bridge that path? So when someone asks you at work, hey, I need you to pick up this task, and I know you might not be familiar with Python scripting, let's say, or you might not know much about AI, but can you read some of these papers and help us interpret this next proposal? That's something you should be willing to do and something you're excited about. And I'd say trying to bridge the gap, always take what you know and think about how you're going to apply it next and build off of it. We had two folks here that are standing in front of you as a panel that are vice presidents and that worked at a help desk, starting up at a help desk, right? And how do you take that and grow your career from everything you learned working on a help desk, and me as a junior software developer starting out, working on JavaScripting? how do I take that and apply it to build skill sets? So having that continual desire to learn, that continual desire to say yes, and continue down that growth path.
So to build off what he said, and I'll use sort of a generic example, is you ever encounter people like in your social life, if you ask them to go out, they say no, and after they say no once or twice, you're like, you quit asking them, right? Kind of the same thing in the workforce, they're gonna ask you, but also the added lens is, with the early in career workforce, when someone asks you something, we know you're not gonna know it, right? But we expect you to do what? Go figure it out. And that's what we want you to do. And it's okay not to be perfect. We'll call it failing fast, right? We want to see, do you have that gumption to stretch yourself to be uncomfortable? Because and that's where things lead to, and that's how you grow. So yeah, have sort of a very fuzzy boundary issue when saying yes to certain things, but highly encourage it because it's going to lead to a lot of different places, right? So for myself, as an example, just help desk, when someone asks me to do something different, like sure, I'm going to go do these things, and I built out those experiences, those profile of experience I was talking about, to lead me here where I am today. And then same thing with our early in career hires at a place, and sounds like a marketing pitch for Microsoft, is when you come in here, people come in here maybe not necessarily on their same role that their forever role, but we are such a large company that there's highly encouraged to move around every few years. Even our leadership will ask all of us every year, hey, what are you gonna do next? And I'm like, I just took on this role like a year ago. And they're like, they want you to ensure that you grow, that you stay curious, because those are the things that help companies survive year over year and survive in the marketplace, but also ensure you have a good job satisfaction to wherever you're at.
I'll stay with you too. After their degree program, any certifications you recommend they should definitely get?
I'm smirking because some people already asked this question and they know what exactly I'm gonna say, is I'm gonna say no. And the reason why I say that is certifications are a great feather in the cap, and they tell us that you took a test and sort of your capstone on it. But what we want to be able to see is, do you know it? Do you really know it? And so as an example, someone asked me about all of our cloud certs. I'm like, yes, but you can also sign up to get our free cloud access to go tinker and play with, build your sandbox. That becomes more meaningful, because that tells us you've played with it and you've built something and you've actually learned it. Because if we ask you a question, say like an interview process, and it's going to be very basic, but it wasn't on the test, you're not going to know it. Like as an example, we ask, hey, where's this switch in the GUI? And you'd be like, if you only took the cert, you wouldn't know it. So it tells you we didn't do any practical use of it. So what we really care about is how you've used it, because that's a value, right? Reciting information is not, I hate to say it, it's not a value. It's how you're able to apply it to someone asking you a question or applying it to their use case, so that way they can get value based on what you know. That's what matters.
Yeah. So one question I always ask in an interview process is, give me an example where you failed and how you overcame it. Because you're going to fail. You're going to run into an obstacle. I mean, at lunchtime, at noon, I had a meeting with the CEO and all of our key executives about timelines for projects that we're struggling with because there are obstacles. That doesn't mean we're going to stop. The train doesn't stop. So what we're really working at, and these are very bright folks, how do we address these obstacles and remove them? What we want to see in young people is when that obstacle hits, or when you just didn't meet the mark, what is your next move? And if you're tenacious, you're going to find a way to overcome it. You're going to get the obstacle out of the way. If you, simple thing, I did get the CCNA. I failed it like 3 times before I passed. But I wanted, and the reason I took the CCNA isn't to get the certification necessarily, is to force myself to learn network protocols. And I didn't have an opportunity at work to be on a router. I had to do it somehow. That was my approach. And eventually, I had an opportunity to teach the class. So I failed 3 times, but then I mastered it by getting to the point where I could teach the class. So I think that's an example of what you have to do to be successful.
That's great. I'll stay with you. This is our final question, and after that, I'll ask audience to ask any questions by a couple of microphones on each end. And just taking a bigger view, most likely, if you're lucky, you'll be in the workforce for 40 plus some odd years, right? 22 to 62, or give or take, somewhere in there. What advice would you have for people? How can you stay relevant, up to date? Continuing education could be part of it. It's a long, slow marathon, and some do better than others. And in your experience, what do you think the key is to success in the end?
So I think you have to enrich yourself. You have to take charge of the role of seeking out enrichment opportunities. And I do it yearly, and I actually get frustrated with colleagues who don't do this, is go to a conference. And I can tell you, I go to some odd conferences, but where you can hear something that is fresh. Sometimes I go to RSA, I don't hear anything fresh. I've gone to the workshop of economics of security, information security. It's an odd group because they're econ people who are also information security people. But you hear things that I have a white paper from that conference that is applicable to the SEC rule change about disclosing data breaches that are materially impactful. So what I'm saying is companies now have to disclose their data breaches that might affect their stock price. My reference to talk to my CFO, that conversation last week, was a white paper from this conference. So go find those opportunities for enrichment and invest in yourself, even if you have to pay for it yourself, or take a class in the evening, or go to a seminar, or don't let 6 months go by that you did not enrich yourself. And find a discipline that is outside the body of knowledge you have.
Yeah, I love that. I completely agree with what he had said. I'm going to build off of it and say, what you're doing this weekend, keep doing it. Don't stop taking these types of initiatives to grow yourself, okay? So as you're here, grow yourself, grow your friends, grow your team, and be competitive with it. What I'll say to that, though, is don't stop there. I would encourage you to find a way to give back to others. There's nothing more meaningful than growing a team and growing friends and then growing folks that need your support. So to stay engaged as you go to these conferences, as you go to different engagements, as you go to different range events, bring somebody along. Teach them. Let them know how you're doing and why it's enticing to you. And if it stops being enticing to you, then you know this is not for you anymore. So one of the ways that I think I've progressed is surrounding myself with fantastic people. I've got a fantastic team that I work with that are here today. I love coming to work every day because of those folks and because of how we work together. So find a group that you enjoy working with, and when you're working with those people, understand why it is that you enjoy that, and let that help you guide your career. And then help guide others' careers. Again, because there's nothing more meaningful. You don't have to be a teacher necessarily. You don't have to be a coach as a profession. But be that in your career field and help those other folks grow and mature. And I think keeping yourself, with all the other things we've talked about today, guys, keeping yourself curious, keeping yourself competitive, be collaborative. If you do those things and you advance your education, as Ted was just talking about, and then you give back to others, you're creating a life cycle for yourself that's gonna expand beyond yourself. You're gonna have people that want to work with you, and that's a fantastic feeling. So I wanna say those are the things that I would love to see you guys do, and if you take one or two of those things away, you're gonna succeed. So that's where I see career paths growing in the future.
And to build even further off what everyone's saying, a bit of prescriptive advice is that what I've always said is, if I'm the smartest person in the room, find a different room where I'm not the smartest, because I will not learn, I will not grow. Also on that sort of same thought process is that all of us here are probably very similar with sort of our backgrounds. Great, we're an echo chamber. Go talk to someone who's not in this field. Figure out what their problems are, right? The small mom and pop shops, other industries. You're able to help them figure out what those conversations are, what their challenges are, because again, we are an enabler as technologists and cyber individuals. So how are we valuable? We're valuable helping each other collaborate on ideas and getting caught up to speed. But after a while, we're an echo chamber. We already caught up. We have all these different mediums, social media, X to help keep track of all the different threats. But how are we using what we know to help others? And that's how you're going to be more valuable and continue with your education, and figuring out what our friends, what our customers, what our partners' challenges are, and fixing them. And you won't know those conversations unless you start talking to them. Not just talking, listening to them, right? We talk amongst ourselves, but we listen to them, is what I would challenge you to do.
Great advice. Thank you very much. Any questions? We've got mics on each end. As you come up, please say your name and institution that you represent and ask away. Unless I've asked all the relevant questions. That is also possible. Oh, there you go. Here's a brave soul right there. All right, they're trickling in.
Hi, I'm Cole Walther from James Madison. This question is more directed towards undergraduates and students who aren't reached the senior level yet. But as an intern, what do you expect from either of your companies, not knowledge-wise, but experience, like life experience-wise, from an internship position at one of your companies?
So for our interns at Microsoft, it is, we're going to sound really repetitive, but it is that exploration, that curiosity, and just figuring it out. And also with, I would say, we might give you a task, but how do you make it better? Like, hey, can you go generate, I'm just going to make something up, generate this dashboard with this data set. And you might realize, like, well, this is only a snapshot in time. This is no good for helping what I know it to be make decision making. So go then, hey, I'm going to go data engineer something so it's live data at any given time instead of a snapshot. Or like, oh, wow, you went above and beyond. We didn't ask you to do that. But we were curious to figure out what we were trying to do and then try to make it better. And because we don't want to give you something that's going to make you like look bad, or we don't know what you're capable of. So exceed what you think our expectation is of you and learn to quickly learn, go learn something, and it's okay to fail, and then pick yourself up from it. And then generally speaking, that's kind of what we look for interns is we know you're not going to know anything, but we want you to go show us that you're capable of learning.
Yeah, I'm going to echo that statement and say, be comfortable with trying on your own, but then be comfortable also asking the questions like Tu was saying of why am I doing this? What is the end goal? And making sure that you're reaching it, but give yourself a chance as you're doing it. I think we all look for people that are trying and to be creative and then trying also to figure the problems out on their own. But then also understanding when is it time, you have to really understand when is it time to rely on somebody else versus if I thought through this enough, did I reach all of the goals and I'm running up to a roadblock or an obstacle and I can't remove that. And so now I need help. And being able to talk through that with folks. I think that's a very important part of seeing how you're trying to progress as an intern and problem solve.
Yeah, I would say if I give someone a project and there's 4 elements to it and they got 3 pretty close, but the 4th one was out to lunch or just not right. But they made a run at it. I got great clay to work with because I see an intern as clay that I'm helping, I'm molding, I'm building. I can help you with the 4th one. I'm glad you really took a run at the 3 and made them good. The 4th one, let's talk and we'll get you pointed in the right direction.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Nicholas from TCC. You mentioned you worked on getting a certification because you just want to get used to that tool and that service. What are some like home lab stuff you guys have personally been working on recently? I'm just curious.
I'm going to say we're probably a little old for that. I would say but to be honest, this came up from a customer context is they want to use generative AI. And so I have to build out something. So I had to architect something. I had to go quickly learn. They gave me a diagram. And I'm like, this isn't right. It doesn't have all the things that are necessary. So it was more just-in-time learning, I would say. But I was very curious, and it forced me to do it. And honestly, no one was asking me. It's because everyone else on the team was looking at each other, like who has the capacity to go quickly learn this. So that's something I did lab out using Azure OpenAI, using generative AI, using our document AI services, understanding the architecture. So really what I've labbed out more recently is a data pipeline with using a scraper using our data engineering tools or science tools in Azure is what I've done. And of course, using our, from a security lens perspective, RBAC models to ensure that is there, and also putting the right access and safeguards with the data and how it's managed. So.
So I told you I was trying to learn about AI. So I got ChatGPT, and I asked ChatGPT to tell me about my boss, who's a retired admiral. And then I collected the results, and in my briefing about my AI policy, I briefed to my boss what ChatGPT thought of him, thought who he was, which was very inaccurate. And this was to highlight to him in a meaningful way that it's not perfect, that the data could be wrong because it takes it from the internet. So, you know, that's my example, is that when you, and I actually tell my colleagues this, think about your audience before you present to them. What do they want to hear?
Yeah, I can't say I've done a lot of tinkering with anything you guys would care about. In fact, it's probably so novice and rudimentary, but it's a similar story. I used ChatGPT to check my kids' math homework. So I'm not kidding. I used it to check the answers because I could not solve his Algebra 2 trig homework. But in doing that, it was interesting because, you know, I started asking it different questions, different ways to see the interpretation. And I was fascinated that at times it was actually not coming back correct. So I unfortunately don't do a lot of tinkering. The last time I did tinkering was installing Ubuntu and trying to run a couple of scripts. But unfortunately, I think at this point, most of my tinkering involves Power BI and then just trying to see how to look at, and not manipulate, but how to look at data sets differently and different reporting mechanisms that we use. We use Microsoft products, obviously, and trying to see how, there you go. I gave you, if you guys don't know, Tu did give me $5 if I would do that. So I'm kidding. No, but in all seriousness, right now, most of it is how do you look at data sets differently? How do you analyze data? And how do we use it to help ourselves make better decisions? So,
I want to make sure we stay within our time, so I'll take the next question, all right? Is that okay, please? Go ahead.
Thank you. Good evening. My name's Jessica Foisey. I'm from Danville Community College. I also work for the city of Danville as a public school teacher for 3rd grade this year. Typically 2nd grade, but this year they looped me up. Which of course I found ironic that you said take opportunities that you didn't want maybe initially, or they're fuzzy lines, because I sort of felt that way this year. How do you bounce back or justify when you're in an interview for something that has set you back? You understand why it set you back and why you couldn't at that time go forward, but how do you put it in a positive light in an interview? For example, an illness that makes someone, you know, sick or something, or a disability that holds you back, that, you know, like when you're walking in front of them, I use a rollator to walk around. Unfortunately, 2017 changed my life that way. So I had to learn how to teach around my young children, my 2nd graders who, you know, they don't watch, they're not careful. They're curious creatures, which I found interesting. I'm sorry, sir, I don't remember your name from Microsoft. But every day, I want those kids curious. I want them learning. We have to introduce technology. Initially, this is what hooked me into this field. I had to take recertification credits. I went into cybersecurity because my daughter was taking a course. And she said, Mom, take this with me. Maybe it'll help you in the classroom. I took it. It was nothing related to my classroom. However, it got me interested to try another course the next semester, which hooked me. However, I'm working full-time as a teacher, trying to look at when I justify why, you know, like in interviews. So I work at the Sylvan Center. I work at the public school. I take college part-time. How do you justify, you know, when a setback, like I was saying earlier, hits you? Last semester I had a setback that really hit me. I got some Fs for the first time in my college career because I was with the Honor Society last semester and all the semesters prior, but how do you justify that?
Yeah, sure. So before I answer, thank you for being very vulnerable to all of us here. So that's very commendable. I probably wouldn't have been as vulnerable, so that shows a lot of courage, so thank you. I would say the way you, if I heard it correctly, how you justify setbacks, what we like to hear during interviews is, what have you learned from it and what have you put in place to make sure you mitigate against that going forward, right? And we all understand that those setbacks, we all have them, but what we try to do is we won't want to repeat them, and being aware enough of, like, say there is a situation that you mentioned with your, you know, getting somewhere because your walking speed, it takes a little bit longer, then you could say during interviews, as a simple example, well, now I leave a little bit earlier, or I schedule more time in between. It shows that you're aware of it and you're actively managing, and you're helping also bring awareness to it all and communicating it. So really the short answer is ensuring that each one of those setbacks arguably aren't the same because of the same reason, and you've put something in place to ensure it doesn't repeat itself. And that's where I would keep it of a simplistic answer. Of course, we could workshop different ones depending on the setback, but that's the theme that you want to go by, and that's what we want to hear, because that tells us that you've learned from it or you're aware of it, and then you've solution and managed it correctly. Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so very much.
Yes, sir.
All right. Hi, my name is Sam Sultanian. I'm representing VCU, and I wanted to pick your guys' brain a little bit, and what Mr. Tran was saying before about how AI will probably not have a large-term effect on, like, the people's ability to, like, get jobs. I find myself agreeing with that a lot, so I wanted to ask, what's your guys' perspective on, like, general AI, or if you're not familiar with that term, AI that's able to replicate actual human intelligence?
Well, I would say this, in our discussion prior to this, is AI is just a component of a next iteration of data management. And how you manage that data, how you validate that data. If you go by the NIST risk management framework, it'll talk about mapping, measuring, governing. So those, I think NIST got it pretty close to right in terms of you have to manage that. You have to measure it to validate that the outcomes are the ones that you want. But let the technology do what the technology does.
Yeah, I would echo that sentiment. I would also say that don't blindly trust, right? Use as a I like to think of, you know, I know folks use ChatGPT or other AI mechanisms to develop thoughts and turn in a paper, for instance. If you want to use it as a basis, but it doesn't replace your own ingenuity, it doesn't replace your own imagination. So I'd caution relying exclusively on, and rely more on a foundation if you want, and then you need to add in the componentry. Just like we've discussed, it's not going to replace, it might replace the first couple of tasks, but it doesn't replace your full workload.
And I would put, in short, is that maybe, you know, it mimics human intelligence, but the part that's missing is being a human, right? Being able to connect, so we have to help each other, and what AI can't pick up on is those nuances, the EQ pieces, when it's appropriate to give a certain answer, right? Kind of like when someone has a very serious life event, like a death in the family. There's a scientific answer to how to get over it, but are you going to say that if someone passed away just, you know, yesterday to someone? AI would probably say one thing, but we as a human would say something else and address those things. So again, back to it all is it does things sort of in a sandbox, in a vacuum with data that's out there, but it's missing that human element. And I think that's probably getting lost in all this, is that's where we will always be relevant, because we're using that as a tool, as we're all talking about, to make our lives easier and better, and it will always stop with us to be able to apply what generative AI is giving us.
All right, thank you for your time.
Just a couple of more minutes, folks. Go ahead, please.
Hi, my name is Jason McCarthy. I'm here from Virginia Western Community College today. You spoke on job satisfaction and how Microsoft encourages moving around quite a bit. As an IT student, it's what I love. I worked retail for 6 years, and there were aspects of it that I absolutely hated. With that being said, what is the biggest risk for burnout moving from college into the industry itself?
So I talked a little about enrichment. You also have to look at your daily life. So, I need, as a CISO, I actually am always connected. Because if something bad happens, there's only one CISO and I get the call. But I have to find those breaks. So today is a break for me. I love coming out here. You all have been great. This conference is twice as good this year as it was last year, if that's possible. But you have to find your place of rest. You have to do exercise. You have to have a full complementary life. And so that, you can read all the statistics about how hard it is to be a CISO, but I have to manage my own life, which is, I took up tennis 3 years ago because I need the exercise. I come to this because I love the interactions. That's what you have to do, I think.
I'll just go real quick, and I know we're in a time crunch. Find folks that you can trust, find folks you want to work with, and rely on relationships. I think we've gotten we've gotten a mixed bag of what we think about relationships after COVID and people in the workforce. But finding those folks that you can rely on and trust and have conversations with, I think definitely helps with the burnout aspect. So I'd say find a circle of trust that you rely on, and then utilize that. Don't be afraid to.
I'm going to steal 30 seconds here. One, work-life balance is the simple answer. But what I've noticed with all of earlier in careers, you all have been grinding in university to study to get through to the workforce. You don't know who you are. So when you get there and you have a job and you're paying the bills and you're like, then what? Most of you have no idea. And that's what's going to cause the burnout, because then you default to work. What you need to start getting in touch of is yourself and what this phase of your life means, and focus on that. That's where I see all the problems for early in career burning out, is they're so focused on getting to the workforce and then working into their careers where they're forgetting about, what makes them passionate about life, right? Why do you want to wake up every day? And it's for work. That's the wrong answer.
All right, that was not so quick, but I want to give you a last question. All right, make it short and snippy. Go for it.
Hello, my name's Ethan Phelps from Tidewater Community College. I was wondering, what characteristics do you guys look for in interns, and for people trying to get their first real-world IT-based job, what sort of, again, characteristics would you guys look for in someone coming in for their first IT job or internship?
I look for eagerness, competitiveness, collaborativeness. All the things we've talked about today, how do you iron those out on a resume? How do you distinguish yourself amongst your competitors? And then how do you show your willingness to grow? I'd say figure out how you lay that out, and that's going to help you advance to the next stage of an interview.
That's all the time we have. You've been a great crowd. Great panel. Round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much.